More than 200,000 short messaging services, or SMS for short, are sent by people all around the world each second. World Tech Statistics also states that this equals to about 7 trillion messages per year on average. This is just one example of the many various ways to communicate through internet communication. According to reference.com, internet communication refers to the number of different ways people can communicate over the World Wide Web. Understanding the use of internet communications is important because it is a resource most people use daily because of the various ways it allows us to communicate easily with one another without having to make actual face-to-face communication. After researching this topic, I realized that I have also used various forms of internet communication. One example of my experiences has been instant messengers and emails while I was deployed overseas, allowing me to continue to conversate with my loved ones back home. Today I will be talking about the 3 main forms of mediated messaging, along with the pros and cons of using these platforms of communication. Rouse defines text messaging in her article as is the act of sending short communications between cell phones implemented by a wireless carrier. The article Text Messaging Facts You Probably Didn't Know, which is displayed in Figure 1, explains that the average adult spends a total of 23 hours a week texting. There are many pros when it comes to internet communication through text messaging. It is fast and simple. Texting allows you to quickly make a point in only a few characters. You can be virtually anywhere and send off or receive a text message. Text messaging is preferred over other communication forms by both adults and youth. And lastly, the quick responses allows it to feel more like a normal conversation. But with most things in life, there are cons to texting. It is typically a smaller form of communication, meaning that text messaging users don't tend to write or read multiple paragraphs in a message. It also can lead to misunderstandings because it is more difficult to mimic tone of voice or attitude in a text message. Overall, text messaging is a good method of mediated communication because of the ease and quickness of allowing you to send off a message without having to make a lengthy phone call. However, it also takes away the meaning of fully communicating with someone because of the messages typically being quick and short, which can lead to misunderstandings. While text messaging is a super common method of internet communication, another really great form is also video conference. The informational article from LifeSize defines video conferencing as a live video-based meeting between 2 or more people in different locations using video-enabled devices. According to Koenig from EdSurge News, more than 100,000 schools in 25 countries are using the service, the company reports. A benefit to video conferencing is that it puts a face to the voice. Psychology Today found that the belief is 55% of communication is body language, 38% is the tone of voice, and 7% is the actual words spoken. This is useful because these important factors are still visible and heard when using video conferencing. More pros of video conferencing include that it is a cheap alternative to face-to-face communication, meaning that it is less expensive to use a video conference compared to having to fly and get a hotel room for the business meeting. Lastly, video conferencing allows for easier collaboration. Many video conference platforms allow for multiple users to be active at once. Contrastingly, disadvantages to video conferencing include poor connection due to the internet, poor audio due to background noise, and visual fatigue. Visual fatigue is very common because unlike being in a real meeting or in a class, you can get bored easily or become distracted. There are many great uses for video conferencing, such as having it during the time of the pandemic for school and work to try and continue to keep things as normal as possible. The connection and being able to see each other's faces behind the voice is nice, but it does not compare to the true communication you can get from in-person communications, especially when internet, audio, or visual fatigue issues make the communication inefficient. The last communication type I will go over is email. According to an article from The Guardian, email is an electronic message distributed by a network. This article also explained that the very first version of what would become known as email was invented in 1965 at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. There are many advantages to using email as a form of mediated communication. One is that messages can be encrypted, making it possible to send confidential information. Emails are also generally free to send, not requiring subscriptions or fees. And then lastly, files, images, PDFs, or other content can be attached to an email, allowing for depth to the message. There are also disadvantages to emails. You may have to wait a long time to get a reply, which makes the communication seem less conversational. Also, spam mail is a big problem, making up 2/3 of all emails sent. Lastly, both you and the person receiving the email must have an email address and access to a computer or a device that can access the internet. Overall, email is the oldest form out of the 3 forms of communication that I have discussed thus far. Many workers and students use email for their form of communication in the workplace and for contacting their teachers because of the numerous benefits of it. However, disadvantages are present in the response time, spam, and requirement to internet access. Today, we have discussed 3 different forms of mediated communication and their advantages and disadvantages. It is evident that mediated communication can be very helpful, especially in times like these with the pandemic. But as we saw, there are also many downfalls of mediated communication. With mediated communication, you can never capture the full essence of what in-person communication has to offer. Thank you.
Perfect.